All right, everyone, I want to talk about cash flow today. I think we've all heard the phrase that cash is king, but I actually want to push on that and say I think cash flow is king. So we want to make sure we plan that out in advance, and then we're going to check back in on our actuals and see how well we're doing compared to actuals. So what I've got here is just a simple cash flow spreadsheet. It's available on RFP Online for those of you enrolled for that. And what I've got on my other screen here that you can't see is all of my economic planning forms. So that's where I've got my stock flow and my gross margins, my overheads, and my benchmarks. And once I've got a plan that I'm happy with on the annual basis, then I'm going to use this spreadsheet here, and I'm going to come in and look at these monthly cash flows. So we're going to work on cash in and cash out. And so the first thing we're going to come to is just the cash flow. And so here, we're saying, oh, we're just going to sell these calves in October. These are our heifer and steer calves. But our cows that might fall out of the herd here, we're actually going to sell them throughout the year, depending on when we don't want them grazing anymore. And then we're also going to have some other income. I think we've got a hunting lease and maybe a government payment in here too. So there's going to be all this cash in. But if everyone notices here, there's a good 7 months here of cash flow that is not much inflow, and so we're going to go look at the outflow. Let's go down there. So these cash outflows, remember, depending on where you're at in your economic planning process, these outflows are scattered throughout the whole operation. So remember, livestock purchases are part of the trading account, but we do have to pay cash. In this ranch, it just bought a few bulls here in February. And then we have direct costs for the cow-calf enterprise and the hay enterprise. So depending on when we calve or brand or ship or preg check, we're going to have these direct costs floating through the year in the cow-calf enterprise. And then the hay is going to depend on when we plant, fertilize, put that hay up, or whatever that might be. So you can think about when those costs are going to hit your checkbook depending on the time of the year. Same thing with land and labor. There's going to be things that are paid monthly, and then there's going to be things that are going to hit different times of the year. So you can plan that out, and you really do know when those things are going to happen. Things is going to be the machinery and equipment. You're going to have, once again, monthly stuff, but then maybe you got a few more bulk tanks of fuel, and then there's always going to be some loan, other expenses like your professional fees and your insurance and stuff like that. And then we get to loan payments. So on this ranch here, we've got, I think it's a tractor payment in May, real estate payment in August, and then the pickup payments due here in December. And we're not planning any capital purchases here, but that's where we could estimate that. Because depending on timing of cash flow, we might want to kick those capital purchases down a few months. So let's look at this operating cash line here. What I'm looking at here is just, are we generating cash enough to pay bills? Or if this is negative, we're either going to have to draw on reserves or borrow on a line of credit. And so on this ranch, what we said is they don't have as much cash as they want on hand, so we're going to draw on the line of credit. So we're just going to pull each month enough to keep the checking account at zero, and we're just going to pull on this throughout the year. And then when we get into the fall, we are going to start paying that off. And then this last column here, I've got a little estimate of interest in there. So that's going to tell us how much we change in cash each month, and then how much total throughout the year. And so we can see in the end, this ranch is cash flowing pretty well, but it's definitely the second half of the year instead of the first half. So there's nothing earth-shattering about doing a cash flow. We just got to be disciplined and sit down and do it. We got to make a plan, and then just watch your monthly cash flow as it goes through. So anyways, I hope this was a help to you, and have a good day. Thanks.